Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first unit of Block 4. We have already gone through various aspects of retail management in the other blocks. This particular block, which consists of 4 units, will be focusing on the retail store operational point of view and how it improves the profitability. Last class, when we talked about the unit 12, we talked about the store operations. We looked into the store layouts and how the layouts can be adhered to in terms of the market requirements and how you can effectively use the store in terms of the physical evidence, the kind of displays and things like that. Something called the physical evidence with respect to retail store operations. Today we are looking at the operational part of it. So today's session is going to be more or less a continuation of where we left off. We'll be touching upon those parameters and we'll be also be adding on. At this point of time, we have already talked about how retail environment is so critical to the customers in terms of their interest to engage with the retail store. It always acts as a kind of a hook or a pull to the retail store, which contributes towards customers coming into the stores, looking at what the product displays are, and then taking a call in terms of the conversions. So what are the factors that we look into? We looked into something called the atmospherics and something called the store operational planning that needs to be done in terms of the layout, in terms of the visual entities, in terms of the fixtures. Because all these, when you're talking in terms of the environment parameters, they all go into creating a good vibe with the target customers or the people who are coming to the stores. And of course, it acts as an attractive point to, like a magnet attracts. You create that customer pool and that increases the profit, the footfalls, and ultimately once they convert, it adds on to the revenues and further on to the profitability of the store. So when you talk in terms of the retail environment implications, the retailer has to look into developing those parameters in terms of atmospheric and store management, so that using the scarce resources, by utilizing their manpower, by utilizing the the tangible and intangible resources that you have, to optimally cater to the requirements of the customer, which results in the profitability by increasing the revenues of that particular outlet. Now, when we talk about retail store operations, we name it as RSOP. So retail store operation encompasses every activity that is necessary for making a store function smoothly and efficiently, right? So when it comes to a store's profitability, a lot needs to be seen in terms of various dimensions, right? In terms of what kind of a design does it have, what kind of product displays it has, what kind of services do they cater to, what kind of sundry facilities do they provide in terms of, let's say, security, in terms of parking, and not the last but not the least is the inventory management that they need to have in order to cater to the customer requirement. Inventory is very, very important. We will be looking at in the subsequent sessions, where you should not be in a kind of position where your stock gets completely consumed and you do not have a safety stock available at your stores. So a well-managed store depends upon the kind of SOP that you need to work out with respect to what type of consumers are coming, when do they come in, and what numbers do they come in, and how do you utilize that space internally to optimize the customer experience, which leads to conversion, and ultimately we are able to jack up the revenue from that store, which affects the profitability of the store. Now, what are the core important aspects of store operations? I have already mentioned that in the last session, where we looked at something called the atmospherics, which basically impacts the customer experience part and the image part of the store. So when you talk about the store image dimensions, the customer will be exposed to those dimensions and they form perceptions regarding the retail. So atmospherics can be further, we look further how it can be broken down into the external and internal atmospherics. We will dovetail deeper into that. We had touched upon that in the last class. Today we are going to go deeper into it. As we move to the second most part of the store operation, that is the retail space management. Space, there is a restriction. Now, depending upon the store size and the location, you may have certain constraints. So one has to understand that keeping those constraints in mind, how the retailer is going to manage the inventory levels, the kind of customer traffic that is coming in, how do you ensure the one which we're talking about, that the customer is more engaged, and we ensure the customer does not feel aggrieved during the shopping experience. So shopping experience has to be very smooth, has to be a kind of a delight for them, so that you can engage with the customer better, and the customer will patronize that particular store. A lot depends upon how the merchandise, the people, the store management, everything goes into making the store management a very critical function in terms of the retail SOP. So if you look into the retail SOP, the RSOP has been called. What kind of, broadly, if you see what kind of tasks that it involves, it definitely looks into the displays, the product displays, the merchandise. How do you categorize them? How to, for different category of, products, how do you do a different kind of a layout? So displays would be dealing with that. And of course, the pricing plays a very important role. How many SKUs of those products are you going to stock? Now, that is a direct kind of a thing in terms of the demand that is created. Which kind of SKUs goes from that particular store is something where you need to go back to your past historical data and say that ideally a retailer should have all of that. But within that also you find that, for example, a shampoo of a size of a family pack size, which could be bigger size. There could be sachets, there could be intermediary SKUs which are of different sizes. But then at the end of it, which pack sizes go more? In case of a Kirana store, they will only stock only those particular SKUs which the customer is demanding. When it comes to an organized retail, it becomes altogether a different story, because here, one, the customer should be given an option to choose from multiple brands. So that is why in a retail outlet, in an organized retail, the departmental stores need to stock multiple brands. Each brand fights for the shelf life, for the shelf also, depending upon their packaging, depending upon their brand visibility in terms of the brand image, the way the brand is perceived. Now, all these depend upon, also look into the type of uses that people buy it for. Somewhere down the line, it deals with the range of products that you can give within a, let's say, even I was giving an example of shampoo, whether it's tubs of shampoo or any kind of material that you talk about, what is the depth that we are giving in terms of the merchandise choices to the customer depending upon their consumption pattern. For example, a household of 4 and a household of 6 may not be buying the same type of SKUs. And also it depends on the frequency of purchase. They are buying on a weekly basis, on a fortnightly basis, or a monthly basis. So the size of the SKU of their products which needs to be there is dependent on that. Second, we also look into the ambience factor. The ambience, if you look into the environment, that is what you're talking about. When you talk about the ambience, it needs to basically give the kind of a feel-good factor to the customer. The customer should feel comfortable within that particular space while they are shopping. They should not be constrained. There shouldn't be constraints of a chaos or a rush, or again that depends upon the kind of products that are being displayed. We'll talk about that in some time now. And of course, the point of sale handling. As I told you, see, suppose I want to look for a particular SKU, I may not get it. It may not be there in the shelf. So can I talk to somebody to get? So at the point of sale, the person who is there, how they are managing. So stock replenishment. When you look into inventory management, the people have to ensure that their stocks are replenished on a regular basis, depending upon the kind of a consumer offtake. A term called consumer offtake is looked into in terms of how do you manage the inventory levels within the store, and what kind of safety stocks you need to maintain, and How much should you be ordering from the godown or the warehouses where you keep it? So some safety level stocks have to be maintained, because that has to be supplied to the point of sale. Because if you don't find those products there, the customer may be aggrieved. Despite all your efforts in terms of attracting them, if they don't get the right kind of product, obviously that might create a negative vibe. Looking into other sundry kind of services, which is like your security, for example. We must be seeing that or hearing news that in certain retail, in big mega malls or supermarkets, there have been mishaps. Somebody has met with an accident in the escalator, which is there, and sometimes those things are not properly guarded. For example, you can going with the kids or old age people, they need a lot of security. There are safety concerns which can come up. So is the store operation taking care of that? Because that may not be a very direct kind of a thing, but it definitely adds to the kind of experience that the customer has. So obviously a retailer has to think on these lines. If you remember last time, yesterday we were talking about the atmospheric part. Even let's say we are getting physically disabled people. How those physically disabled people will be taken into the retail store if they come in? How do you help them? So security plays a and the staff plays a very important role. In some kind of supermarkets, you can provide cafeteria, you can have restrooms, washrooms available for the people to basically overcome the difficulties they may have while shopping, because some of the stores are huge. So they should be properly navigated, they should be properly directed. Of course, with respect to signages, you can always put them, but still then there could be some intervention required. So store operation also looks into that. And secondly, we look into the manpower allocation from the staff. And the staff members should be equally motivated as per the retailer guidelines, because the customer has to be attended to. So what kind of impact are they leaving? Because these are all human beings, right? So you need to sufficiently train them on service quality aspects. When we talk about service quality, we look into how will you give more reliability in your services, how you can assure them, how you can show empathy. All these factors need to be looked into and can be captured in the store operation manuals, and that needs to be also be shared with the people at large. Otherwise, it may snowball into something which they cannot control at a later stage. Now, the nature of operations can vary according to the size of the store. Some of the stores could be like hypermarkets or supermarkets, or you have a mall within which various stores are there. You may have a convenience stores or an individual store. Now, each one can vary the nature of operations, the kind of challenges that the retailer would face would definitely vary, and they have to calibrate their services or operations according to that. But one common factor that goes is that they have to consistently ensure that the store is functioning optimally to the market requirement and also catering to the customer experiences to their satisfaction. Now let's look into what is the various components of retail store operations. If you see, it can be broadly divided into 5 parameters. One is called the customer's angle, because we must, as I told you before, that one of the determinants of customer service retail in case of a retail store is the how the customer perceives about the services. So one has to understand things from the customer's angle. So customer's angle is one. Second, we look into the store design aspects, where we talk about how the store layout has to be worked. We had talked about it in some kind of detail in the last year, but in the last class. But today we are again going to further look into what should be designed according to the market conditions and the kind of requirements that you have. Then we look into an area which we have already covered. We have got a sneak peek into that in the last year, that is the store atmospherics, and then the space management. And last but not the least is how do you integrate internet retail atmospherics so that you create a kind of a blend between your online and offline and make the online experiences as exciting as the store atmospherics. So how do you play with your the display, how you can work out your website, how to design them, how creatively you can put it. So those things will be looked into. Okay, let's move. The first one which we look into is the consumer's angle. Consumers are the basic. I think the ultimate goal of any retailer is to ensure that the customer should be enticed or should be interested or you should be motivated enough to come to your store and look at your merchandise. That is the most important thing. That is why most of the marketing communication, the advertising or the social media interface that we talked about in the last sessions would help to create a kind of the customer interest. The ADA process, if you remember, should be very, very contingent in terms of how do you create a right kind of motivation among your consumers so that they will come to your store and visit your stores and look into your merchandise and engage with the thing and have a good experience. But having said that, we must look into the consumer's perspective also. What kind of stimulus should be given in the environment when they come in? Okay, I'm raising certain, when I'm talking about in the mass media, through my advertisements or the PR campaigns, or you're talking about a digital campaign, we are giving a lot of promises that, okay, if you come here, we'll do this, we'll do that, or we have these avenues, we have these facilities. Now, that raises certain expectations in the minds of the customer. Now, when they visit the store, are they getting the same kind of feel? Somewhere down the line, the inputs given by the retailer would elicit some kind of a impact in terms of the customer. So those stimulus could create this kind of an impact. It could be broadly divided into three parts, as you can see here: a pleasure or a displeasure, or it could be a kind of an arousal, or it could be a dominance. Now, what are these factors? Let's look deep dive into the pleasure and displeasure. Now, in your experience now you take the role of a consumer who has gone to, you must have visited various kind of retail outlets, right? From a convenience store to a departmental store to a mall to a supermarket. If you see their experiences, somewhere down the line, when you look at it from the consumer's perspective, some places are such that you like going. You would like to go and hang out. You would like to spend some idle time. You would like to maybe have a chit chat with, or have a business kind of a discussions. Also, sometimes it does happen because the aura that is created in that particular outlet creates either a pleasure or a displeasure. Now, if I go there and I find that the security is very, very stringent, doesn't allow me to get in, or becomes very, very. Of course, they have their own ways of looking into the security and the safety measures, because you cannot isolate nowadays with the lot of, because these stores also become the target of various terrorist activities. You must have seen that happening across the world. So when the terror threats go up and safety concerns become, obviously sometimes the environment can be, the rules could be very stringent. Or during the COVID times, you must have seen most of them, you had a lot of checks and balances. The guardrails have to be put in. Now that can create a lot of displeasure, whether you like it or not, that is there. But idea is to, from a retailer's perspective, when you see, the consumer should be having a kind of a good experience. So the good experience can come in whatever ways, where you are trying to elicit the emotional quotient of the person. It can happen through so many ways, by the physical layout, very, very calming, or kind of a very, an environment which is soothing, or an environment which is like activity driven. Sometimes it depends according to the kind of the image that the store wants to project to a particular outlet. Suppose you're going to, let's say, a store which is talking about a restaurant, right? Obviously, they have to create that excitement in terms of the physical display. They would be having music running. They could be having some kind of a live music concerts out there. So when you do that, you might feel that people would like to drop into that particular, maybe for the food as well as for the environment that you are creating. So it can create things like perfumes, music, lighting, physical display of the layout itself could be very interesting, or can cater to the pleasure-seeking abilities of the consumer. Or in other words, you must find that there are people who, if you go to a dhaba, for example, which is looking into a very minimal kind of product display, they don't look into cleanliness or sanitation and those kind of stuff. The cleanliness factor is very, very compromised in some cases, but sometimes you get the best of the food out there. Now, I'm not trying to endorse them, but the point here is this, it creates a displeasure kind of a scenario. So there are places where you would like to go and hang out with your family. If it is a dhaba, also nowadays dhabas are already trying to understand these aspects of consumers. So the consumers expect when they come with a family, they also require a place. They require a good place to go, a good clean place. So they have to look into amenities like creating AC environment, creating a sufficient amount of space to sit, right? And it should be, you can have music, you can play the music or whatever it is. So creating an ambience which can either be a pleasure seeking one, ideally it should be, that should be focused, but at the same time it could also go on the other side, negative side. So there could be a discussion, one has to look into those parameters. Second, we look into the arousal. Now all these things again can happen simultaneously. It's not that only one thing is they are not watertight compartments. So then what kind of emotional arousal is the environment creating? Sometimes it could be that the behavior of the people out there might impress the customer so much that they would like to go. Sometimes the layout, the visual appeal of the layout might create a positive arousal, a positive motive among the minds of the consumer, and they would like to go there. But then having said that, once you have brought them in, once they come here, obviously they expect the basic thing is to make them purchase things. So that should not be lost in the path of making the environment very, very conducive to the customer's requirement is fine. But at the same time, you have to have certain criteria put in that. What could you be looking? For example, you walk into a jewelry store, they might give you a cup of coffee or a cold drink or a water, whatever may be the thing, as a kind of a courtesy, right? They may ensure that if you're coming with your family is properly seated, right? Those who then they ask what are you looking for, and they could be escorted to a place where if they find that okay, you are looking exclusively for something, there are people who could be physically taken to a place where they could physically be involved in selecting what kind of a thing. Today, when you talk in terms of like the IKEA stores, many things in IKEA stores may not be liked by the customers. May not create that because it has got very minimal kind of fixtures, and they try to engage the customer in the process of buying. So over there, they expect this. Now understand, the Indian consumer does not align to those kind of things. I'll give a very simple example. Our experience as Indian consumers is when you go to a hotel, in a restaurant, what do you expect? You walk in, you take your seat, and you'll be given a kind of a menu. You place the menu, order your food, have the food, pay for it, and then you walk out. Now, here comes a retail chain, right? Like a Domino Pizza or a KFC or a McDonald's, where you have to stand in line even before you have to place an order. Or there could be an information kiosk like McDonald's does, that on the kiosk you can place the order, right? The order will give you a coupon number or some kind of a index number. That index number will be displayed on the screen, right? Based on which you will have to tell them that whether you want to eat there or you want to take away. So if it's a takeaway, that's a separate kind of a route that you have to take. Now, if you are creating something like you want to eat there, now after having done this, you have to pay even before you are buying. Now, this is something, a concept which was very different from what consumers have seen. The first time when it came, it may have created a kind of it must have created a arousal in the negative sense or a displeasure. As a result, what happens? The customer feels a kind of a disagreement with the thing. What is this happening, right? How can I pay before I even eat the food? But then that's how the things are. So that's another checks and balances. And the second thing is, once you eat, you have to take the tray and ensure that. Nowadays, of course, some stores have said that okay, you have people who can take it. But if you see in Western retail outlets, these kind of outlets like the Domino's or the KFCs, most of them they take that tray and put it into the dustbin which is there, and then they leave. It's a very, very critical thing expected from the customers. Now over there, the customers are attuned to those kind of things. Now when that is not being provided here, it creates a kind of a displeasure. Now it's nothing wrong with that, but the point is that are you comfortable with it? So from a retailer's perspective, you have to understand what kind of a person that you are dealing with, and what kind of habits and rituals they have, and what kind of a thing they are tuned into. And if you want to bring a change in that, it takes time for the kind of engage the processes that you have created for them to adopt. So those are things which you need to look into. Apart from that, when we talk about the dominance factor, please understand colors and layout play a very important in talking about a dominance. What's the dominant factor? They talk about the customer should feel in control. Okay, when you walk in, you must have seen that some places you go to a very high-end store and you get lost into it, and sometimes you don't feel very comfortable because you find the place could be very overwhelming in terms of that environment. As a result, what happens is that there is a I will not say fear, but yes, there is certain amount of apprehension within you or a hesitance in terms of the customer engaging with the environment. So sometimes the lighting, the colors, if you put bright colors and all that, that may pep up the motivation. Sometimes you're having a very dark, dull kind of a look, or very, kind of a place which is very, very, like, for example, candlelight dinner outlets, hotel, restaurants. They give you very, very peaceful kind of an environment. Very soft music will be going on, and you'll have very heavy colors which are displayed, right? Now that has to match with the mood. One has to understand that it should create the kind of feel where the customer feels either dominant, or sometimes they feel afraid. So if they feel that okay, this environment is overwhelming, it is going, I don't feel comfortable, they may not be interested in staying. So it all depends upon how to create a positive impact on the consumers so that you can propel them towards making them feel comfortable, browsing the products and looking into the products, checking them, going for the demos, and then you can have a good feel so that later on they can come back for a repeat purchase. Either they come for their own purchases or they spread the good feeling among their friends and relatives, which talks about the word of mouth kind of a thing. The next important thing when we look into this is the store design. The store design, as the name suggests, it looks into how the store is laid out. Now understand, a lot would depend upon what kind of a store it is. Is it a standalone store? Is it a kind of a departmental store? Is it a convenience store? Is it a supermarket? Is it a kind of a store in the mall, a hypermarket within a mall? So how do you look into those kind of things, and how do you curate the environment in terms of not only in terms of product display, but also the kind of atmospheres that we talk about. So when you talk about both the decor which is there internally and externally, you may take the help of various professional designers who could be looking into how the store has to be designed, because they have to understand the philosophy of the store. And understand all this is done basically so that the store design acts as a kind of a attractive hook for the customer to create the what we have been talking about, the kind of pull of the store, so that people come, they feel feel happy about it. Then of course you raise expectations when you talk about it. You can have a walkthrough kind of a thing which you can share that okay, this is a store which has this, like the Harrods store in London. Everybody always wants to go there and see, right? And once they go in, what are the various departments that are there? What kind of people would be deployed who can take the customer through? What kind of departments would be there? What kind of people would be there? So you're looking into marketing, HR, those kind of things. The payment aisles or the counters. Where would they? If you look into facilities like restrooms where you have to, or a place to sit and want to look into what kind of products are, while people are buying, the family could be sitting somewhere and taking time off, those kind of things. All these would get into designing the store. And of course the navigation, how you navigate looking into your merchandise. If you're having staples, groceries, how the store design is going to be. When you're going for electronic goods, what is that thing going to be? What if you're going for apparels, what is going to be? If you're dealing with automobiles, cars, what could be the layout be like? And if you have a high-end jewelry and those kind of or boutique kind of a scenario, what should be the layout? It depends primarily on how attractive that particular design is. And not only that, if you are a retail chain, the same store across various cities should give the same level of services wherever. So for example, if I'm walking into a West Side store in Delhi or Mumbai or in Kolkata or in any part of this country, Chennai, Bangalore, I should get the same feel. I should have this. Yes, the size can vary. It can be multi-storied in one city. It could be a single-storied in another city. In other areas, it could be out of the town. It could be in a suburban area. That's fine. But what needs to be done is that are they able to maintain the same level of professionalism, the same level of promises that they have made in the mass media when you are looking into the store design. Sometimes the store design, if it changes, obviously it affects the kind of what do you call the response from the customers. They feel okay. This store, for example, Bata tomorrow changes from that red and white to blue color, blue and white combination. Would you like to go to the store? So it can create a lot of doubts or confusion in the minds or ambiguity. So that needs to be looked into. The next most important part in store operations that we look into is the atmospherics part, right? I think we have already gone through that in the last class, but just to recap, what does the atmospheric mean? As you can see here, it talks about all physical elements that goes into making a right kind of an environment, which goes from lighting, signages, color schemes, right? Perfume, music, to influence the shopping behavior. Of course, you look into the product. That's another part. But here we are dealing with mostly the environment parameters, where you are creating a very enabling an atmosphere for the consumers to come and engage with you, right? So that it influences in a positive way. Broadly, if you remember, it has been divided into an exterior atmospherics and internal atmospherics. External atmospherics looks into the external part, I mean outside the store, what all things can be done, what kind of an environment can you use. For example, if your store is in a very, very close to a very kind of a place which is smelly, right? Or in a very, very busy area, then what happens? Does that attract or does not attract? Now these things are very, very important. Nowadays, earlier it used to be, if you see the Indian retail stores, they are in some kind of gullies, small streets of the cities and towns, where you can find that the vehicle traffic would be very going one to one, maybe touching each other, and sometimes they get into a scrabble, and a lot of problems do crop up. So many people avoid going there, primarily knowing that okay, the external looks so shabby. How can I go there? They may get very good products, but at the end of the day, you will not find the kind of the attractiveness of the place from a customer's viewpoint. So many people, a new age consumer today would not like to go. But yes, we have people who would like to go to those places. Like in Chandni Chowk, there are certain areas which are in some corners that you will go and buy. Small stores dealing with crores and crores of revenue. The profitability is very high. They could be having very small stores, but catering to a very large. What defines? So you find mostly in the unorganized sector, the atmospheric is very much compromised compared to an organized retail. Organized retail looks into how the exterior parameter can be looked in from the point of view of in terms of your the kind of attractiveness that the store should have, right? When you look at, and the second part is when you're looking into the interior atmosphere. So you're talking about the layout, the visual merchandising. Visual merchandising can also be a part of an external way, where you, like in case of a Titan store, the outside they could make a window where they say the new arrivals come in, right? the look of the Titan store remains consistently wherever they have the Titan stores. That's again important part. Tanishq would have a different kind of mannequin which needs to be placed. You talk about Manyavar and all. Everywhere you find that they have huge individual stores or they are captured within the mall, but they look very same. The colors, the combinations, the displays, they follow a certain consistent pattern so that a Domino's, for example, a Domino's pizza, the layout, color schemes should look everywhere the same. Otherwise, it leads to confusion. So it is a combination when you look into the layout inside, the lighting, the comfort, all these find a way into understanding what the how the products are basically looking in terms of atmospherics. Now we have already talked about what does an atmospheric do. Atmospheric basically, why we should be talking about atmospherics, because yes, it attracts customers. Sometimes it adds to the store as a brand. In terms of when you talk about brands, yes, brands which are available, but we also store also has a brand. When you talk about so and so outlet, right? You give it a name, KC Mall or KC Furnitures or whatever it is. They have built up a Lulu Mall. They have created a name for themselves. Now that, depending upon the atmosphere that you have created or the kind of promotion that it attends to attracting the customers to those stores, and they also ensure that the merchandise, what kind of merchandise they deal with, they talk about it when they talk about atmospherics. They also reinforces the kind of customer footfall in terms of the and another thing which customers expect is that they get a good place to hang out with or spend some good quality time with the family, with friends sometimes. So they want a kind of a place which is very enabling. So atmospherics does play an important role in creating that kind of a vibe or that kind of a atmosphere where the customers should feel to go there and obviously engage with those relations. So a lot of things goes into designing the atmospherics. So in case of external atmospherics, let's look into a little bit more what can be the signages. When you enter, last class when we talked about the signages, the entrance, the look, what kind of, where is the parking facility, right? All those would go into would be contributing towards the external part of the store atmospherics, right? In some cases, you will find that in case of certain stores, the entrance could be very, very minimal in terms of design. But in some cases, it could be very, very ornate. It could be very well designed, or maybe creating some kind of a different feel altogether. Window displays, which I was just talking with respect to Titan stores, yes, it does happen. Sometimes it make you feel like, if a jewelry one, you might feel like you're walking into a palace. So that kind of a facade has to be created to create more kind of what you call the kind of excitement and enticement with the customers, or an urge or a motive for our customers to go and see what it is all about. If it's a kids store, they would play with colors, they would play with bright colors, they will have a kind of a window display which will talk in terms of what kind of products they are dealing with. Very exciting things. If you're talking, you must have seen Bata's display. The product display itself is so compelling that it draws the kind of customer to enter the particular place. Now, obviously, the location of also plays an important role in this. That if you are located, just now when I talked about atmospheric, what is the vicinity? What is the neighborhood like? Is it a very clean neighborhood? It's a very shabby neighborhood. Suppose you put it into a very, very busy center. Does that attract? You may have the best of the things. Does it attract the right kind of customers who come and utilize? Then next, when we talk about the layout part, we look into the store layout part. We will talk about that in some time, right? Visual merchandising, we will talk about how the products are laid out, how the visual merchandising is done, and the lighting part, the colors, the lighting, all enhance the interior atmospherics. Here is a part of when we talk in terms of the store layout, right? In terms of internal atmospherics. if you see the products which are laid out inside the store, they should facilitate what we call as a customer traffic. What do you mean by customer traffic? The people who are coming in while they are shopping, do they feel comfortable or they feel very cramped? Obviously, nobody wants to get into a store which is very cramped. You must have seen that a family of a husband, wife, and a kid, a small kid. The husband would be hanging around outside the store. The wife would go and go through that shopping, and they may go through a very hassle kind of a thing. They may not be able to give more time to search for the product, and may come out, buy something, and they would just walk out because the store is quite crowded. And so how do you handle that traffic inside the store would depend upon the layout that you are creating. So there could be various kind of layout, as you can see here. Each one has its own advantages, and also it is also pertinent to understand, depending upon the product display, what kind of products that you have been displaying, then you can work out these maps. Now, everywhere you will find that there is a scope for people to navigate through that store in a manner so that you can not only get maximum amount of exposure to the product that is displayed, but it is also creating conveniences in terms of the flow of the customer within that particular store. Now, if a store is multi-layered, it could be, they could have multiple layers. For example, the basement, the ground floor could be having a grid layout. The other one could be having something called the racetrack or a loop layout, or in some cases it could be free flow. So that depends on the kind of products that you have. For example, groceries might have something called a free flow kind of a thing. Whereas in case of apparels, they could have a grid kind of a layout. In case of staples, they may also follow a racetrack or a loop type of a thing. Electrical may have a free flow or a mixed kind of a layout. Or it could be like, as you move it into different stories, different floors will have different kind of a layout looking into the customer. And you'll find that the elevator also, a signage is given that which floor has what kind of product display, so that you can navigate yourself within the store accordingly. The traffic does not get congested at one place and they get diverted. In case of an apparel store, you will find that the apparel store is divided into 4 floors. One for the kids, one for the women, one for the men. So accordingly, it helps you to go to those stores with a reason to search for that. It helps to streamline the customer flow according to the need parameters, right? If you look into the store space management, we had also talked about it. How do you handle the customer flow? Just now we were talking about it with the inventory. The inventory talks in terms of how will you stock those inventory. We'll talk about the store space management in terms of the profitability part of it. Now, the idea when you talk about any store, you have a limited space. Now, you have a lot of products. Now, the idea for a store manager is to see that how much more product can I pack in or can sell. I create a layout, I kind of create an inventory level, I create a store layout. Everything is managed, is commensurate with the kind of experience the customer would like to have and how you can sell more from that given space. So there is an optimal utilization of resources in terms of space, in terms of merchandise. So you create planograms. Like as I just now told you, for grocery, the layout has to follow certain guidelines, which can help you to stock more, display more, give more visibility, as well as the return on investment from that particular area that the product or the service is occupying is giving you more returns. So this is a very cardinal principle, because when you're talking in terms of retail space being utilized for profitability point of view, what is the amount of sales that you can generate from a square feet area or a square meter area? It boils down to mapping the entire store layout so that the product can be properly displayed, and accordingly your inventory levels have to be maintained in your godowns or the warehouses where you have. You have to have sufficient amount of stock so that when you're stocking them according to your store plan, you are able to ensure what kind of SKUs you need to maintain, what kind of layout you need to have, How do you have a display of products? Will you have mannequins? You'll have dustbins or gondolas or whatever it is, right? Or sorry, not dustbin, but bins basically. Gondolas which can showcase your products, and you can have better visibility to your products. When you're going through a staple product of groceries, you must have seen you deal with multiple brands. Are you able to showcase all the multiple brands over there? Sometimes you may find that the shelf space is given a certain amount of space. Within that, you have to pack it. Now, where do you pack it? You go it at eye level, the ground level. Are you able to ensure that, okay, a pregnant woman is going, can she look into the search? You have to ensure that she will be coming with a trolley and would be back. You have to empathize with the customer in terms of the inventory, the movement, as well as the layout. So all these things have to be worked out in terms of maximizing your store output. In terms of, so there is a balance that one needs to do in terms of space management, in terms of as well as customer convenience. So three key elements that would go into is how do you categorize. Category management is basically where you are category buying products under similar heads and then allocating spaces, because the idea is to have more categories so that organically you can showcase more products to your customers, right? Then comes, can you divide them into various categories and departments? As I told you, for electronic goods, you can have a different department. You can have a accessories in different department. You can have leather goods, footwear, depending upon the kind of merchandise that you have, and looking into the customer's interest also. What people come here for? Is the store coming here? They are coming here most for the apparels. Then apparel section should be properly located. In which floor, or what if it's a multi-story? If they're entering, where would you place the apparels? Where would you place the footwear? Where would you place the accessories? All these talks in terms of the product display. And sometimes during I told you sometime before that these places are also places where you look into creating demonstrations, road shows. So if your stores are very huge, you can create those kind of space for creating some kind of a store-in-store kind of a thing. You can create product displays which have unique things, and if you have a new arrival of a product, then you can showcase those products, and for that particular period of time you may give a different kind of a arrangement in terms of designs and so on and so forth, so that it attracts more. Secondly, we look into seasonal and profitability allocations. So here we talk in terms of which product is giving more profits. Where would you place them? The products which are going off the shelf very fast, how would you allocate the space within the store, right? Would you like to give more lighting? Has to be arranged in terms of giving more exposure. Seasonal products, if you're dealing with seasonal products, like if you're talking about woolen garments and all that, when the season comes, those need to be displayed at strategic locations where you have more visibility. Coming to another parameter of retail store performance, which I was talking about, is that how do you ensure that you are able to, so when you look into the store profitability, we're looking at productivity, looking into one thing: sales or profit per square meter, a linear meter and a cubic meter. I'll show you a kind of a layout which will say how the retailers allocate these products or showcase the product in terms of the store space, so that they get more return out of it, and so they invest in that kind of a layout, and they ensure those kind of product types are put up and a particular kind of layout is followed. Just to take you through, we have already talked about, if in the last class, that there are different ways in which the sales and profits per square meter can be done. If you see here, in case of A, these products are aligned to the wall in one particular segment, and it may have that one particular product category there. If you see here, mostly vegetables and fruits, they are displayed here, right? So it requires a minimal space, but it can be tucked in the one corner. So you're maximizing the return from this in terms of the square meters. Now, if you come to a linear kind of a thing, look at this. It's again linear in the sense you could have certain rows where you could display multiple kind of product categories. Like you can see here, some of them are box type, some of them are bottle type, some of them are the family pack size. Like you must have seen the grocery items, the vegetable oils and shampoos and all those kind of things. You can have a multiple kind of a product which can be displayed here. Then comes the question of Cubic, these are like refrigerated stuff, food products which need which can go or can go can putrefy or can get so they need some kind of a proper refrigerated environment. So you find that meat products or for fruits, those kind of things, in some cases ice creams and all, they can be showcased in these kind of projects. There could be huge areas which are dedicated to where you're trying to calculate in terms of the cubic area space. So all the three combinations can be utilized maximum in terms of the store. Now next we move into a depending upon the product categories, how the layouts have been. If you can see here in case of staples, what kind of product displays are there? It could be having a combination of the linear as well as the cubic as well as the square feet area. If you can see here, if within the space, so many products are displayed. As a result, a customer who comes has multiple kind of purchase. They can navigate the sufficient amount of space. They can navigate around it and can make those purchases. So it becomes effective in terms of navigation, in terms of display. So you're leveraging more in terms of sales as well as we find out, okay, this section can be more profitable. So either we look at it, the retail store performance in terms of profitability or in terms of sales. Now here is another display where you can see that again groceries have been packed on both sides, giving sufficient amount of space for the customer to move around and look at this trolley, which is big size capacity, and they are purchasing huge. Maybe they are purchasing for a monthly perspective or a fortnightly perspective or a weekly perspective. Based on that, these things are there. In some Western countries, you also have a display associated with this trolley, which tells you which part of the thing you are. It is so sensitive. So they have sensors which can indicate which part of the store has got what. You can punch in and you can find out what kind of displays, and you can go to that section to buy these kind of products in terms of the display. This is another example of where you can have a display, the store layout done according to where you are leveraging the space, giving multiple kind of opportunities, whether it is through a square meter or a cubic meter or a kind of a in terms of your what do you call a linear fashion of displaying the customer products, so that you are giving sufficient amount of space. Store layout is attractive and customers don't feel aggrieved in terms of the rush, which I was talking about, the hassle of going through this merchandise. At the same time, you are getting a lot to see in terms of visibility. So lighting also has to be done in sequence similarly in that fashion, so that every product gets the right kind of weightage in terms of being evaluated by the customer at large, right? So again, if you see here, these are all basically the wine section and the that kind of display. Again, here the display is very, very unique. There were chocolates, wines, and all those kind of things. Of course, not very common in India. In some places where you are allowed to buy liquor. You must have seen liquor salons have come up, standalone liquor salons, where the display has been very, very interesting, right? The footfalls could be very high, but you are able to see, in this case, you are able to differentiate between what kind of merchandise. So within this space, you are leveraging so many merchandise options for the customer, and they can go all around to find out. So the store layout, whether you are trying to leverage in terms of the square meter area or the linear parameter or a cubic parameter, cubic gives you the depth. So you are able to look at it from a 360 degree and able to get more visibility to your products, product displays. Now, this can vary. It could be very important from electronics. I have not captured an electronics showroom, but yes, electronics showroom would require those kind of things. You need space for demos, for the product demos. So that needs to be taken into account. So these are some of the things that you look into in terms of the layout. Then we talk in terms of visual merchandising. Visual merchandising, as I told you, something to do with your how visually you can captivate in terms of your displays, in terms of your product, in terms of making things attractive. I was giving the example of IKEA, like Raymond's showrooms, which create a lot of, you can use both for external atmospheres and internal atmospheres in terms of the display. And you can look at it from these layouts, how visually appealing these are. Sometimes you may have a kind of a kiosk which informs you about certain products. You want to know something about a particular new product. You can go to the information kiosk, punch in those information and can get. Today, when you walk into an airport, you can have your boarding passes from the information because that's a part of visual merchandising again from the services point of view. So when you go walk into let's say a website, you can again take it onto an online format where you can make these atmospherics a part of the interface so that you can engage. We'll talk about that sometimes a little bit later. We're just about to get into the internet part of the atmospherics. But idea is the visual merchandising should be creative, visually appealing, aesthetically designed, and should be able to create the kind of environment that the atmosphere is trying to create, whether it is a very professional environment, whether it is a kind of a very informal environment, whatever environment you want to create, the visual merchandising always helps you to convey that. You must have seen people in case of a hotel, they are dressed, they have an attire, so it gives you certain uniformity to the kind of thing. So it makes you also feel that, okay, are you working? You may not like, oh, are you working here? You may not feel like saying that. But in case of a restaurant, you find that that's very, very important, that the person, you should be able to demarcate between who is a waiter or who is taking order and seeing things like that. That needs to be so human being, but wearing that particular dress code is a kind of visual merchandising that you do, right? Product displays are very, very, how do you display it in display boxes and things like that. And in case of apparels, we have seen how effectively the displays can be, visual merchandising can be utilized to entice people. You must, if you have gone to a Titan showroom, how the products are displayed, what kind of, in case of islands or in case of shells, in case of the kind of mannequins, all those can be used to enhance the visual appeal of the store. Going forward, when we look into the atmosphere and the internet set, we had talked about it in the last class, the way we looked into that. Yes, today we look into omni-channel options. So the retail online has to be there. First thing is how you are making your website. Is it a very dynamic website? If it is a dynamic website, what are the degree of information that you are packing? Is your website attractive enough to create a visibility? When you are searching for something, is your website getting that traction in terms of the keywords? So if the keywords are there, would your website be linked? So once you get that link, that would click, when you click on that, obviously it leads you to the home page. The landing page should be interesting enough to give a sneak peek into what the retail is trying to, or what the company is trying to provide. People may browse over there and may go to the offline stores to buy. So we have online, offline, omni-channel options available in those kind of things. So obviously, the internet speed, we are talking about 5G services. Yes, that's fine. Because if it takes time for things to get accessed, obviously the technology support is very, very important in terms of making the website more viable. When you are creating apps, is that properly integrated? For example, today I can place an order by going to a Domino's store on the app itself. Does my integrability, digital integrability helps me to establish those kind of things. Now, if I'm getting certain products online, do I have product returns? What kind of things? In offline, you have that, okay, within a particular period of time, you can come and give the products back, or you can exchange it and those kind of things. In case of an online thing, how do you track that? How do you track the order? How it is being, when you're placing an order, how it is being transferred from one place to another? You are given an ETA, an expected time of arrival, how that is getting properly. So you have to not only look into technology, but also ensuring that a proper navigation system is there in terms of tracking the product as it moves from the go down to the point of consumption or to the delivery points. Now, sometimes you need to ensure that the bounce rates are those which when things do not happen, so the bounce rates are reduced. Retaining customers on an online thing is a challenge by itself, right? Though it gives you a lot of options to choose from, but creating customer what do you call it, satisfaction, retaining them have their own challenges. Everywhere you find that the kind of SOP that you have created in terms of various kind of engagement, whether in terms of purchases, return back, right? Those could be the cardinal principles or the cardinal areas, aspects which contributes towards an online experience, improving the customer experience. With this, we come to the end of today's session where we looked at store operation, where we looked at atmospherics and space management. We also saw how the operations is so crucially integrated into managing the store image, looking into the atmospheric and the space management. At the same time, we also look at how you can blend both offline and online stores to manage in such a manner so that the operational parameters are put to maximum use in terms of optimizing the performance of the store and catering to better store profitability and sales figures, as well as ensuring customer is satisfied. With this, we end today's session. Thank you.